Shimoto-Tari, thank you very much. I will now hold a roll call vote. Brooks, please call the roll.
President Garland Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Aye.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Aye.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Aye.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimoto-Tari.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to item 12. Item 12 is the state annual performance report for Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, covering program year 2021 to 2022. The California Department of Education recommends that we review and approve the executive summary for the FFY 2021 APR for Part B of the IDEA, covering program year 2021 to 22 as prepared by the Special Education Division. And the item will be presented by Heather Calamise of the CDE. Heather, please begin.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to see you.
Good morning.
Pleasure to see you all and present the Special Education Division's FY 2021 update of our annual performance report. In addition to hearing how the state of California is progressing towards our targets, you will also hear how the Special Education Division is working to improve our performance on the targets, as well as the partnerships we have strengthened both internally and externally to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. With that, we'll get started with a few slides that will ground us in data in terms of who we're serving, and remind you that we serve a student population that is rich in diversity and rich in need across our state. We will also then take a deeper dive across our 17 federally mandated indicators. And then finally, we'll highlight the partnerships and the work that's being done across the state and hear from our multilingual support division and our early education division on joint efforts across our division to support students with disabilities as well. What you see here are typical slides just in terms of overall who we're serving in the state of California. Our total enrollment in this slide here is reflective of students with disabilities from birth to age 22. As you can see, there's been a slight decrease in total enrollment of students with disabilities over the past 2 years, not different or similar to the overall general education population decline in enrollment in the state of California as well. This next slide here just walks us through sort of the past 10 years of both population of K-12 students and also the percentage of students with disabilities in the state of California over the past 10 years. As you can see here, there has been while there's been a decrease in overall enrollment, the percentage of students with disabilities has grown, right? So it's an interesting dynamic here that obviously for us here in the state of California, continues to show the need for resources, state investments, and statewide support for LEAs and professional development for educators, paraprofessionals, and administrators as well. This is a number we will certainly keep our eyes on to ensure that we have effective systems and supports in place as well. These slides here, similar to previous years, there has not been much change from our last APR cycle. The numbers have stayed consistently from year to year. The only addition or sort of change was there was about a 1% increase for both foster youth and socioeconomically disadvantaged students in terms of the local control funding formula as well. But the numbers have stayed about the same over the past 2 years. In terms of the percentage of students with IEPs in one or more of the LCFF student groups for the previous year, again, stayed fairly consistent, no large increases or decreases in this category as well. In terms of over the past 6 months, the Special Education Division has been engaging in strategic planning and priority setting, which I hope the board can hear about soon in the coming months. The work of our division can be bucketed into the following areas that you see here: monitoring and target technical assistance, data collection and reporting, effective dispute resolution, interagency professional development, fiscal management, and non-public schools. As such, we have a very large division and oversee a wide variety of activities in terms of our general supervision. But we, in terms of our strategic planning, are developing priorities to ensure that we have aligned and integrated data-driven governance and accountability and support systems that reflect the priorities of equity, diversity, inclusion. Inclusive practices that are driven by high-quality program, planned and documented with high-quality IEPs, and also ensuring that we have healthy and a well-trained workforce through professional development systems and recruitment efforts as well. So more to come on the strategic planning, but certainly this is also a piece that is guiding our work moving forward as well. In terms of our monitoring system, the special education has a tiered monitoring system, and the state of California has made investments over the past 2 years to better align both special education and general education systems. For instance, the LCAP addendum, through parent participation. There is a tremendous opportunity for deep engagement at the SCA level, county office level, SELPA level, and LEA level to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. We must ensure that our systems are designed in a way that supports all learners and reflects efforts across multiple areas to reach our goal. It's important to note that roughly 177 of LEAs in differentiated assistance for students with disabilities have already conducted a data analysis and root cause analysis to address outcomes for students with disabilities through our special education SIM process, which you'll hear about in just a few moments, that our special education division has developed. These processes and outputs can and should be leveraged within the DA process and included in the LCAP. These LEAs already have a jump start in terms of integrated improvement plan for for students with disabilities. As part of the legal requirement to monitor local education agencies, LEAs, the special education supports our districts to address both compliance and performance areas through a process that we call Compliance and Improvement Monitoring, or CIM, C-I-M. The process places LEAs into tiers of support and differentiates the support and engagement based on the need of the LEA. The CIM is a 3-step process that assists LEAs in answering the following questions: what's occurring in the district? Why is this occurring in the district? And how can we make effective, lasting change? And LEAs engage directly both with CDE and TE providers through our statewide system of support and a number of activities such as integrated data analysis, assessment of infrastructure, educational partner feedback and focus groups, root cause analysis, and prioritization. And all of these activities are with an emphasis placed on high leverage activities for maximum impact. The remaining LEAs will also be going through the CIM process in 2023 this year with the support of CDE. All of the CIM resources that LEAs use for improvement planning are available to LEAs and also are for use in the DA or differentiated assistance process as well. We have carefully thought and built out tools, technical assistance and support for LEAs who will be going through CIM in the DA process. And again, our staff will be working very closely with differentiated assistance teams and LEAs in the future to make these resources known and available so that LEAs can continue to work throughout the process as well. In terms of how LEAs are selected for the CIM process, these are the areas in which each year the California Department of Education is required to make what we call annual determinations. These determinations designate LEAs into the tiers and determines a level of support. As you can see here, these 5 areas are the areas in which CDE and our technical assistance providers provide additional support. The CIM process, which I spoke a little bit about before, here, again, just sort of a little bit of a visual to the words in terms of, first, again, what is occurring in the district. That's step 1, right, to figure out what is exactly happening. 2 is investigation, right, really sort of drilling down into their root cause analysis in terms of the why. And then the third step is the planning process. And so a comprehensive plan has been developed for implementation using parts of other plans that may, or other data, but there is a comprehensive plan that is developed at the end in which the LEA will use and utilize as a living document for continuous improvement efforts. In years 2 and 3, the process continues. We know through the lens of continuous improvement that change takes time. So steps 4 include a sort of a step back and an assessment of actually how the plan is going and are we meeting those expectations and the goals in which the LEA set forth. And so if not, then there is a period of just adjustment to ensure that the LEA is on track. The implementation updates occur in partnership with CDE as well to ensure that LEAs are on track to meet their goals. And then in year 3, there is continued implementation. The LEAs continue to implement the plan, review any local data that might be relevant, and then also provide any updates to CDE. And then also they, again, work with us very closely to ensure that their plan is aligned tightly to their goals as well. All right, so that's just a little bit about an overview of who we serve in the special education and how we go about doing our work in terms of monitoring and support for LEAs. Wanted to shift our attention to the annual performance report in and of itself and walk through a few of the key indicators here today. We won't walk through every single one, but you do have them in your packet. But I will be highlighting several key indicators throughout the course of this presentation. The annual performance report is a requirement of the California Department of Education, is required of the Office of Special Education Programs. The State Board of Education must approve this plan prior to submission to OSEP next month in February. If you do recall, the targets for this current cycle that we're in, fiscal year 2020 to 2025, were approved at the SBE meeting in 2021 last year. Any of the previous APRs or state systemic improvement plans can be found on our website for your reference as well. I do want to sort of preface before I jump in, this is certainly a required activity, but I think also it's a meaningful activity for us at the state and really takes shape and brings sort of a focus area for our work moving forward as best we can align with our statewide system of support and our technical assistance and really utilize and drive these indicators for meaningful change across the state of California. So I will jump in here and talk just about a few of the compliance indicators that you see before you. These compliance indicators are set by the federal government, OSEP. They are either 0 or 100. And so in terms of the couple of reminders here is that indicator 4B is suspension and expulsion is lag year data. So that data is reflective of 2020, 2021. So you see a 0% here. That number is likely representative of distance learning environments where students were not able to attend school in the physical sense. We do expect this number to go up, hopefully not too much, obviously, as students have returned to classrooms. So next year, this time around, you will see that number change. And again, it's because there is a little bit of a lag year data in that as well. In terms of, just want to talk just a little bit about sort of disproportionate and significant disproportionality. Disproportionality here is really what we call an early warning system. And so LEAs who have been identified for disproportionality are required in a 3-year process. The first year is to conduct a root cause analysis. Second year They are required to implement change practices, and then the third year, if they are found disproportionate, they are found to be significantly disproportionate, which means they must set aside 15% of their IEDA federal award to develop a plan to address the needs of the district and the specific need for the student body in question. One of the compliance indicators that I wanted to highlight for you here was early childhood transition. I think that this particular indicator, we saw such a steep decrease last year. This year, we have seen a noticeable increase. This could be contributed in continuing ongoing investments that CDE and the state budget have made in early childhood and our continued partnership with DDS. The state budget gave CDE $850,000 and 6 positions to form a new unit in special education, specifically to strengthen the transition process of young children with disabilities from Part C to Part B services. This will allow CDE to work closely with DDS to encourage a seamless transition and coordination in our state, regional centers, and at the local level as well. In addition, the budget commits $700,000 in federal IDEA funds for the CDE to partner with the California Department of Developmental Services to develop parent-friendly resources on transition services, including the difference between Part C and Part B services, options for students after they turn 3, and an overview of the transition processes and transitions timelines. We do know that transition for our youngest learners and our families can often be a scary time. And we are certainly pleased that this number has increased, particularly over time and particularly during COVID. And this is an area that we will continue to focus on, as we know that a smooth and seamless transition to Part B services can set the trajectory for student success throughout their educational career. And this will be a continued focus area for us at the state here as well. In terms of the performance indicators, this roadmap here, which you may have seen before, visualizes how a student is placed and supported in their least restrictive environment can have lower instances of discipline. And this means they are spending more time in the classroom, receiving their instructional minutes, which can lead to better outcomes measured by statewide assessments, graduation rate, and post-school outcomes. So we know that a healthy start to education begins at birth. We know that it starts with high quality early childhood care and supports and services, with timely assessments, with appropriate instruction. And then also provided in the right setting will lead to those post-school outcomes that we want to see for all of our students as well. In terms of our theory of action as well, again, just sort of a different spin on what I just said, but again, this combination of, again, ensuring that we have the right placement for students, the right supports, coupled with high quality instruction, oftentimes we know leads to a reduction in behavior problems, which leads to increased time in the classroom, increased participation in the student's learning environment, which in theory then should translate to graduation and post-secondary achievement for each student as well. In terms of the performance indicators that you see here in front of you as well, I won't be going through each indicator in the presentation. All of these indicators are, again, within your item. I will highlight the work that's being done around indicators 1, which is graduation, 4A, suspension, expulsion, 5, educational environments, or LRE, 6, preschool LRE, and 14, just post-school transition. And again, I think it's important to note that indicators 1, which is graduation, indicator 2, dropout, and 4A are all lag year data. So these are data pulled from the previous year. This is the second half of our performance indicators. Again, won't go through every single one. I did want to draw out, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but the post-school outcomes, we did see some steep decreases last year due to COVID, and then we're seeing some numbers rebound as we would like this year as well. In terms of the performance indicator 6, preschool and least restrictive environment, this is an indicator that, as noted in last year's presentation to the State Board of Education, the Office of Special Education Programs changed the measurement of indicator 6 to exclude 5-year-old kindergartners. They had previously been counted in this indicator. So again, we did expect to see a significant impact to this indicator this year after the removal of those students. This year's data reflects, I think, sort of a continued refinement to the reported data. And while it may seem in 2021, 2022 that the indicator 6A decreased by 10% and 6B increased by 10%, this does not mean that students who were in more inclusive settings were suddenly placed in more restrictive environments. I think it's important to note there has been a decrease of over 40,000 students in the population for this indicator over the past 2 years. And again, due to the removal of the 5-year-old kindergartners. This decrease has been seen and felt across the board in all educational environments. So in fact, there were just less students overall in the indicator and 6B environments as well. I still don't want to minimize I think sort of, there is a reason or rationale and a condition that has impacted sort of the numbers that you're seeing today, but that does not, I think, account for or we're not going to sort of lessen our focus on this area. We know that preschool LRE is extremely critical, and that while sort of the calculations have changed and the landscapes have changed, that our approach to supporting high quality preschool environments will continue across all settings as well. And in some of the pre-K investments that we will be utilizing, and you'll hear just a little bit more about later as well, is to address some of the LRE, preschool LRE that you last saw in the last slide. Children with an IEP or IFSP, Individualized Family Service Plan, will be categorically eligible for California State Preschool. Along with, Stephen Profiter, we'll talk more about this later in the presentation. Again, there was a requirement for the set-aside to reserve at least 10% of students with IEPs, similar to Head Start, with a phase-in process. So this year, there will be, last year was a 5% set-aside, this year will be a 7.5% set-aside. And then starting July 1st of 2024, there'll be a 10% funded enrollment reserve for these children, and contractors must serve those children in those environments as well. Even if a child does not qualify for an IEP, the state preschool program will still be an option for them as well. And there are also $2 million $1 funds to incorporate early identification for learning disabilities into the state preschool assessment tools, including a process followed up by expert evaluators as well. Indicator 5, which is least restrictive environment. Again, we're talking about the students who are aged 5 through aged 20, and age 6 through 22, served inside regular education classrooms. Indicator 5A and 5C are trending in the direction CDE would like to see. Indicator 5B is reflective of just, I think, year-to-year fluctuations. I think the effort and the emphasis placed on inclusion or inclusive practices can be felt across the state in a number of areas. I would like to highlight the work that's being done by our partner supporting inclusive practices, or SIP. SIP, as we like to call them. The SIP project supports LEAs to increase access to general education settings with research-based evidence practices, targeted training, and technical assistance to supporting students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. Currently, the SIP project has 55 LEAs as grantees as they work closely together as cohorts. The outcomes for SIP include shifting attitudes towards inclusion, equity and access, implementation of inclusive practices, and utilizing universal design for learning as a curricular framework, as well as using evidence-based teaching practices in terms of moving our key indicators forward as well. The SIP approach is to assist LEAs in building strong leadership support for inclusion and having leaders articulate an inclusion vision clearly and urgently through formal articulation and by priority setting as well. SIP uses several key data sources to closely monitor the effectiveness of their project and the work that they do. Overall, the 55 grantees and those in long and newer cohorts have shown positive movement on this indicator. And then also SIP was recently tapped to pilot a project centered on early education at LRE, and 2 grantees have been selected to this work. All this to say, the success of SIP has been noted by the state budget and the state continues to invest in the SIP project, and SIP received over $1 million in the state budget last year. As well. So certainly the work in LRE and across LRE we know takes time. We're talking about changing mindsets, we're talking about changing policies, we're talking about changing practices. And so the work of SIP and across these 55 grantee areas, we will continue to scale and certainly support efforts of inclusion across the state. The other indicator that I would like to highlight is indicator 4A. Suspension and expulsion. In terms of suspension and expulsion here, the calculation for that is a little bit different than the dashboard. So again, we're looking at students with disabilities who are suspended for greater than 10 days in a school year. And again, this is lag data as well. This was the number that was 0. And again, next year we know this number will increase by nature of the fact that we are no longer in a distance learning situation. In order to address suspension and expulsion for students with disabilities, as we know, this is a critical area, an area of focus for us across the state. The California Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MTSS, is a systemic and continuous improvement framework designed to provide effective technical assistance for districts and schools to address every student's academic, behavioral, social-emotional needs in an inclusive and equitable learning environment. Driven by policy and practice, strong leadership, and family and community engagement. The California MTSS helps districts and schools increase attendance, prevent dropouts, lower disciplinary rates, and improve school climate and boost academic performance. MTSS, or California MTSS, achieves this through coaching, community practice, and also the MTSS pathway certification of schools. And we know that I think sort of robust MTSS systems is a system that, in theory, and certainly a best practice should be implemented in every single school setting as well, as it provides the appropriate level of support for all students in a school setting, and provides a pro-social and positive environment for students to thrive and to learn. In terms of graduation, here, again, this indicator is different than what is reported on the dashboard. Indicator 1 is a 1-year calculation, meaning it looks at the percentage of students who exited special education due to graduation with a regular high school diploma out of all students with IEPs that exited special education. Here, again, we've seen that we are meeting that indicator as well, and certainly we'll look forward to increasing this metric as well, so that all of our students with disabilities are exiting with a regular high school diploma. I think to that end, there have been several budget investments over the past couple of years that have sort of spoken to the fact or acknowledged the fact that there is a need for certain students with disabilities to have alternate pathways to get to the diploma, recognizing that, again, the student body that we're serving is extremely diverse, and both in sort of demographic, but also in need, and recognizing that there are multiple pathways to get to the same end goal. And so with that, the alternate pathways to diploma and some of the work that's being done around that in the sort of previous and current budget acts gets students that have more significant needs, and students that don't qualify for the alternative assessment have a clear pathway towards achieving a regular high school diploma. Indicator 14, post-secondary outcomes. Again, here, we know that for students with disabilities, life after high school can look very, sometimes is also a very sort of scary transition process as well, ensuring that we have students that are not only graduating with a diploma, but also have a chance to meaningfully engage in college and career or in workforce is something that certainly is a focus here for the state. It's also important to note as well that the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, has also made this a focus area for our for the country essentially as well, in terms of ensuring that we have meaningful post-secondary outcomes and improving our performance across these indicators as well. And here we saw decreases in this number last year, but we are seeing numbers start to rebound as we're coming out of the pandemic. We look forward to seeing these numbers continue to track positively in years to come as well. In terms of our state systemic improvement plan, which is indicator 17, which is technically the last indicator, the ESSIP, as we deem or like to call it, is addresses plans for improving outcomes for students with disabilities. The California State Identified Measurable Result, or we call it the SIMR, all these acronyms, I know, I'm sorry, is the performance of all students with disabilities who took the CASP, both in ELA and in math. And then our ESSIP is focused on creating systemic and sustainable changes, including the necessary alignment and statewide accountability and improvement structures, like the statewide system of support, to improve outcomes for students with disabilities as well. So California has made significant progress in building a statewide system of support that effectively assists LEAs to design and implement effective improvement strategies for students with disabilities. We know that a comprehensive system of technical assistance that's available through the statewide system includes evidence-based practices to effectively serve students with disabilities. The statewide system of support seeks to support LEA's efforts to implement and implement the improvement strategies outlined in their LCAPs and to monitor intended improvement. California is now in year 6 of creating a coordinated and coherent state structure to ensure LEAs receive the assistance necessary to address disparities in student outcomes. California's ESSIP is focused on creating systemic and sustainable changes, including necessary alignment and statewide accountability and improvement structures like the statewide system of support to improve outcomes. I just want to go back just really quickly and talk about one of the areas that I think will be a key lever in this improvement process is the IDA Local Control Accountability Plan Addendum. The 2022 Budget Act included the development of the IDA Addendum, which stipulates by July 1st of 2025, LEAs that have been identified for CDE for improvement will develop an addendum in conjunction with the LCAP. This addendum will support inclusive planning. It's designed to be an inclusive planning process and will promote cohesion by linking special education and general education planning, again, getting to the one system and closer to the one system that we all are working towards. And again, the budget requires the inclusion of parents of students with disabilities on district and county LCAP parent advisories committees as well, ensuring equity of voice for all students. In terms of sort of what's next for the state and the system of support here, we know that sort of everything that we do is designed to funnel down into the classroom level as well. So the layering of supports and initiatives and services is really our goal here, working both, sort of vertically and horizontally, if you will, with each of the partners of our educational partners at each level to really effectively change and work to improve our outcomes with students with disabilities. I did want to note we are also at an exciting time as well. Our new grant year cycle starts this year, July 1st of 2023, with a new statewide system of support and special education resource leads. This grant year cycle will run through 2028. This time around, the budget has allocated $12 million annually for this new grant cycle. The CDE and SBE work diligently to put together a comprehensive and targeted RFA to address the areas of highest need at the state at this current point in time. The budget language currently states that there will be no more than 10 resource leads. At least three of those leads will be designated to build local and regional capacity to support LEAs. At least one of those leads has to support the development and implementation of high-quality IEPs, one resource lead to develop the capacity at the LEA level on universal design for learning framework, one resource lead to focus on English learners and how to best support, and then one resource lead in partnership with a family support organization will focus on alternative dispute resolution. So an exciting time ahead in terms of sort of a new sort of an additional iteration of this work and a continuation of this work in general in terms of how we're supporting and improving outcomes. We're optimistic about the number, the quality of applications that we will receive, and along with the work that will continue across the state and integrate into the statewide system of support. And now I just wanted to take a brief moment in time to pause and now transition over to highlight a couple of the CDE partnerships that we have strengthened within our own department and recognizing that the overlaps and the intersections of students with disabilities, of multilingual students and our early learners, we can no longer ignore, right? We know that there are areas in which commonly we hold for our students. And so right now we are certainly working together collaboratively as a group in order to shine the spotlight, elevate the conversation of how we're working together to address some of the challenges as well. Okay. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Alicia Moreno Ramirez, who's the director of the Multilingual Support Division, who will run through just a couple of slides and highlight the work that both of our divisions are doing to support dually identified students as well.
Good morning. Thank you, Heather, and good morning, President Darling-Hammond and members of the board. My name is Alicia Moreno Ramirez, and I am the director of the CDE's Multilingual Support Division. Today, I'll share briefly on some of the key collaboration across the Opportunities for All branch, particularly highlighting how the Multilingual Support Division is partnered with the Special Education Division and the Early Education Division to benefit California's diverse children and youth, as well as how we produced together some of the guidance and resources also born of that collaboration. The California Department of Education Multilingual Support Division, or MSD, the Special Education, or SED, and the Early Education Division, or EED, have a long history of collaboration that's resulted in the development of important policy and guidance that continues to shape education in our state. First, the California English Learner Roadmap Policy, or EL Roadmap Policy, was developed through the collaborative process coordinated by the MSD that included teachers, administrators, county office of education representatives, educational nonprofit representatives, and representatives from multiple divisions in the CDE, including SED and EED. The English Learner Roadmap Policy was approved by California State Board of Education in July 12, 2017. And as a result of the collaboration with EED, the EL Roadmap Policy calls out explicit connections to dual language learners in preschool and the importance of alignment and articulation within and across systems. And due to SED's involvement, the EL Roadmap also calls attention to the importance of addressing the needs of dually identified students across the system. In addition to providing input on the policy and guidance document, the SED also collaborated with the MSD to develop a three-way crosswalk between the EL Roadmap principles, the Special Education Annual Performance Report Indicators, and the Local Control Funding Formula priority areas. This tool allows education leaders to see the connections between these three areas as they use this resource for planning, again, in the best interest of students. The California Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities was also developed collaboratively between the SED, the MSD, and through contract with WestEd. The Practitioner's Guide was developed to make valuable information on serving English learners with disabilities or dually identified students in TK through grade 12 readily available to busy educators. These documents continue to guide CDE's work in supporting English learners and dually identified students in preschool through grade 12. We can pop to the next slide, please. As part of our ongoing collaboration, the MSD, SED, and EED have continued to engage to ensure consistent approaches aligned with the guidance in the EL Roadmap Policy and the Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities. The goal of this collaboration is to support local education agencies to better support and embrace the children and communities that they serve, and to build upon the assets that these children and youth bring to California schools. The MSD and SED collaborate monthly with the Imperial County Special Education Local Plan Area, or IC-SELPA. At the CDE IC-SELPA collaboration meetings, the SED, MSD, and IC-SELPA engage in collaborative conversations regarding timely topics such as reclassification, the alternate English language proficiency assessments for California, or ALT-LPAC, identification of dual language learners with disabilities in preschool, English learners with disabilities placed in dual immersion programs, and other topics related to dually identified students. Further, the IC-SELPA has developed and presented training modules on the Practitioner's Guide, co-presented with the MSD and SED directors on educating dually identified students, promotes resources to support EL Roadmap implementation, and has provided training for CDE staff on English learners with disabilities. The IC-SELPA also collaborates with the 2019 Educator Workforce Investment Grant, or EWIG, EL Roadmap Implementation Grantee, called EL RISE, or English Learner Roadmap Implementation for Systemic Excellence, to provide customized professional learning focused on dually identified students to EL RISE Anchor County offices of education and participating districts based upon the needs of local educational agencies. IC-SELPA further provides supports for these counties to connect with their local SELPAs. The MSD, SED, and the Assessment Administration and Development Division also meet quarterly to collaborate on responding to inquiries from the field that overlap with the work of multiple divisions, such as reclassifying students with disabilities using the LPAC or the ALT-LPAC. The MSD, SED, and EED also continue to collaborate to create communication pipelines, co-develop presentations that reflect the intersectionality of students, and co-present when opportunities like this arise. For example, the MSD recently developed content and talking points for universal pre-kindergarten presentations, and the SED and MSD directors will co-present at the upcoming California Association for Bilingual Education Conference. Region 15 Comprehensive Center supported the MSD, SED, and EED in cross-division collaboration through a series of facilitating meetings where we can best see the interconnections of our work. These meetings help build the foundation for ongoing collaboration between and across the three divisions. The MSD, SED, and EED continue to build a collaborative relationship to better support students and the educators who serve them in assets-based and needs-responsive ways. I'll now hand off to, I believe, the Director of Early Education Division, Stephen Profiter. Is it coming to you, Stephen?
Coming to Stephen. Thank you, Alicia. We know you're busy. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather and Alicia, and good morning. So to build off a little bit of what Alicia and Heather have shared, Our divisions have worked closely together on a number of state initiatives and efforts to increase access, participation, and supports for children with disabilities in inclusive early education programs. A cornerstone of this partnership is collaboration to support inclusion in UPK, or as we've said earlier, Universal Pre-Kindergarten planning and implementation. We've had strong coordination to develop unified and clear messaging for the field in our published guidance and our webinars, as well as on addressing any concerns that come up from the field. Another area that I want to highlight is the huge advancement in inclusion in the California State Preschool Program, or CSPP, as you'll hear me reference later, where we've been working hand in hand across divisions to develop guidance for contractors on how to implement changes related to enrolling and serving children with disabilities in the CSPP. The changes will have a huge impact on access for children with disabilities, creating more inclusive classrooms and ensuring that children with disabilities are educated in the least restrictive environment. Some of these key changes include children with disabilities now have categorical eligibility for the state preschool in addition to higher priority for enrollment. And by 24-25, as you heard Heather mention earlier, our state preschools are required to set aside 10% of funded enrollment for children with disabilities and to ensure that children are educated in the least restrictive environment. I also want to highlight some key programs and spaces for collaboration. Assembly Bill 1808 of 2018 established the Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program, which you'll hear me refer to later as EAP, administered by the CDE to support early educators in increasing access to early education programs like the California State Preschool Program. Funds support three main areas, including facilities improvements, adaptive equipment, and professional development. The current year budget also included resources for state-level systems building. You can refer to page 35 of yesterday's TK item for more details on this. Our divisions have worked closely during the development of the existing grant and are currently collaborating to expand the program through an upcoming request for applications process. Also under AB 1808, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction established a cross-sector agency work group in April 2019 for the purpose of sharing challenges, barriers, and best practices for inclusion of children with disabilities, and to work towards continuous improvement of inclusion of these children in high-quality early learning and care programs in California. The work group consists of multiple state agencies and other early childhood constituents. With technical assistance from the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, the work group completed a statewide high-quality inclusion indicators assessment to determine areas of improvement for inclusion, as well as developed a strategic plan. Currently, the work group is coalescing resources to support the field in implementing high-quality early learning and care programs. The three main activities include creating and disseminating a communications plan on inclusion, including the development of a reference guide for inclusion and resources to address barriers, reviewing and disseminating existing special education and inclusion-related guidance, regulations, and policies, including the development of a frequently asked questions resource, as well as coalescing best practices, standards, and policy resources, including a matrix of technical assistance resources and a review of inclusion assessment tools in collaboration with Quality Counts California. To increase collaborative efforts across divisions within the CDE and to leverage our shared goal of supporting our youngest learners with disabilities within inclusive settings, the CDE established a cross-division coordination on inclusion team in November of 2021. Currently, staff from the Early Education Division, the Special Education Division, and Multilingual Support Divisions participate on this team with the intention of adding additional divisions as collaborative partners within CDE. The team is currently revisiting and updating goals established during the previous year, which include determine areas of need for the field and identify resources to support inclusive practices, determine internal and external technical assistance needs around inclusion, including training on the Lanterman Act, Special Education Legal Foundation's best practices for inclusion, desired results, access, adaptations, and accommodation, universal design for learning, and a program overview from an EAP grantee. Another goal in this team is to coordinate efforts between divisions, including determination of ways that monitoring teams align and how they can collaborate to best support services to children with disabilities. While the Special Education Division has been the lead on collaboration with the Department of Developmental Services Early Start Program, it has been clear that the intersection of initiatives and issues has brought an opportunity for our departments to deepen their partnership. The CDE has made efforts to increase support for children transitioning from Part C or Early Start to Part B Special Education Services, in addition to children who may become ineligible for Part B services but still require early education services. I'm going to hand over to Heather to share some background on the Part C to B transition and the importance of our partnership.
In terms of our partnership with the DDS, as we like to call them, again, we know that, and I spoke to a little bit earlier, the transition to Part C to B is one that is a critical time in a young learner's life. And so those seamless and coordinated transitions, again, provide that solid and strong foundation. And again, as I mentioned previously before, the $850,000 plus resources to establish a early childhood transition or early education unit within the Special Education Division was brought apart, is being brought to life, and we should have that unit up and running hopefully by mid-February or so as well, to continue the partnership, both not only with Steve's division, but also with the Department of Developmental Services as well. Again, the work that we're doing with both the Department of Developmental Services, again, working with DDS on specifically developing both shared resources and parent-friendly resources that are available on the services that are available after a child turns 3, and an overview of the transition processes and timelines as well is a focus area for us. And then this past summer, both the CDE and the DDS spent an entire day doing some strategic planning, which will be the first of many sort of a series of meetings to ensure that both of our agencies are ensuring that we are both working together towards a common goal as well as participation on the Interagency Coordinating Council for Early Intervention and our joint partnership with that as well. And then also hosting and holding a regional center transition liaison meetings as well. So again, the importance of partnering with DDS on sort of the early ed side, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Department of Rehab on the sort of post-secondary side. Again, education sort of sits in the middle of this equation, and it's extremely important that all of our agencies work in a coordinated manner to support a student's birth through age 22 as well. And again, so we are again working with DDS collaboratively to again develop those resources and work towards our strategic planning, but a shared goal that our agencies share is that our early learners have the strongest start possible in their educational time. I think with that, we've sort of concluded. We've had quite a bit of discussion, I think, in terms of just sort of the overview of the work ahead in terms of sort of currently where we sit in our annual performance report, and then the work that we're doing to continue on. We know that, again, while this is federally mandated, this is the work that we do, and to embed and integrate and align across all areas and content areas in multiple contexts will continue to strengthen our charge and our mission to ensure that all students are thriving in joyful learning environments as well. So again, the next step, this concludes this portion of the sort of presentation, and next steps again would be pending approval of this item The CDE in our division will go ahead and submit to the Office of Special Education Programs on February 1st. And typically, as typical in years past, OSEP typically approves those programs or plans around April of the 2023 as well. So again, we're recommending approval for the FY 2021 APR and SUP to submission to OSEP. Thank you so much for your time. A pleasure to be here and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Heather. We really appreciate it and appreciate knowing what the CDE is doing to advance the goals as well as what the targets themselves are. We are going to do some amendments to our next steps. It turns out that there were some sound issues on the webcast when we took up items 11 and the waiver consent items. Although we understand that the closed captioning was working out of concern for public engagement, we are going to reopen these items after we conclude this item. At this moment, I'm going to ask for liaison comments about this item and any quick clarifications. We'll then take a break before we come back for full discussion because it's been a couple of hours since we started this morning. So a little bit of adjustments in the flow of the meeting. And I want to just give member Yashimoto Tari an opportunity as our liaison to respond to the item. If they're clarifying items, we'll take those, but we'll come back for public comment and discussion after break. Member Yashimoto Tari.
Thank you, Board President. So I'd like to also share my appreciation, not only for today's presentation, but also for the collaboration of multiple entities and practitioners throughout the year. As Director Calamisi mentioned, this is a required item for us to review each year, but it's also about the meaningful continuous improvement as a state that we want to make for our students with disabilities. For a little bit of context, the data in this report, when it's paired with the data in the school dashboard, we get a more complete story on how our students with disabilities are doing, including the data points that tell us how preschool students are doing with disabilities, as well as some insights on how students with disabilities are doing after high school, which I think are important to mention. And it's also important to call out that the indicator targets in this report really represent the floor of our expectations as a state. And we know that there are LEAs and individual schools within our LEAs that are exceeding the targets presented here. And I think it'd be ideal to have practitioners share in front of the board at some point with other practitioners across the state. So as a final note, as CDE highlighted at the top of the presentation, students with disabilities are students with intersectional identities. So we see our students showing up in every student group. And the meaning of that to me is really that the success of our students with disabilities falls on all of our shoulders as a responsibility and requires the collaboration of multiple divisions in our systems as we saw today. So that being said, I look forward to the discussion on how these data, both in the report and in the dashboard together, continue our improvement practices. Thank you, Board President.
Terrific. Thank you. And I love the idea of us hearing from some practitioners who've been making progress on some of these things about how they are doing it. So we'll keep that in mind for a soon future date. Are there clarifying questions for Heather before we take a quick break? I'm not seeing any hands at this moment. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. It's 10:21. Let's come back at about 10:36. We will then go to public comment. The public comment slide is posted. If members of the public want to queue up for comment, please call the number on that slide and dial in the participant access code. Then we'll take comment, have our board discussion, and then go back to item 11 to be sure that everyone has had the opportunity to hear. All right, see you in 15 minutes. All right, we are back. And Brooks, could you please call the roll to establish the quorum?
President Darling Hammond.
Here.
Member Escobedo.
Here.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Here.
Member Lewis.
Here.
Member McQuillan.
Here.
Member Olkin.
Here.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Here.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Here.
Member Porter.
Here.
Member Rodriguez.
Here.
Member Yoshimoto Tari.
Here.
Everyone's present.
All right. So at this point, we are going to hear any public comment that may be queued up for item 12. Is there any public comment?
We do not have any callers in the queue for public comment.
All right. So now we're open for board discussion. Let us know if you have any comments or questions on the item. I am seeing no hands raised. Do I have a motion to adopt the CDE recommendation? Member Yoshimoto Tari, so moved.
I move. Thank you.
Member Lewis, thank you. We have a second. We'll now call a roll call vote. Brooks, please call the roll.
President Darling Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Yes.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimoto Tari.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. And now, because we did not have fully functional sound at the beginning of our meeting this morning, I am going to report again that in closed session, the board discussed or took action on the following legal matters: Mark S. versus State, Napa Valley Unified School District versus SBE. And then we're going to go to item 11, which is the approval of a charter school number assigned to a newly established charter school, Mayacamas Charter Middle School. The CDE recommends that the state board assign a charter number to the charter school identified in attachment 1, and the item will be presented by Stephanie Farland of the CDE. Stephanie, please begin.
Thank you. I'm thrilled you wanted to see me again. Okay, so item 11, as mentioned, the State Board of Education is responsible for assigning a number to each approved charter petition. This item addresses the assignment of a charter school number for Mayacamas Charter Middle School, MCMS, a recently authorized charter school. A little background on numbering: California Education Code 47602 states that the SBE shall assign a number to each charter petition that it grants pursuant to Subdivision J of Section 47605 or Section 47605.8, and to each charter notice it receives, based on the chronological order in which the notice is received. Each number shall correspond to a single petition that identifies a charter school that will operate within the geographic and site limitations of this part. Mayacamas Charter Middle School was approved at the State Board's September 14-15, 2022 meeting. The SBE reversed Napa Valley Unified School District's and the Napa County Board of Education's denials of the MCMS petition pursuant to Ed Code 47605 K2E. At the same meeting, the SBE designated the Napa County Office of Education as the oversight agency for MCMS. MCMS is approved to operate as a classroom-based charter school for a 5-year term of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2028. The California Department of Education recommends that the State Board assign charter number 2134 to MCMS. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, and so the public comment slide should be displayed so that we can open the phone line for public comment. Members of the public wishing to provide comment, is there somebody putting that slide up? Members of the public wishing to provide comment on the item, may do so by calling the number, telephone number, and using the access code provided on the slide that will be shown momentarily.
Okay, the slide is up. Just give them a few seconds because of the potential lag in the broadcast.
Yeah, we're not seeing the slide yet. Ah, it seems like it's trying to come up. Brooks, I'm not seeing the slide up yet. So if there's a lag, it's a pretty long lag.
It's on the webcast, but it isn't showing here on the screen right now.
Okay. So those who want to call in can see it. Or if we're confident that it is on the webcast, we can open the queue for public comment.
Okay, we currently do not have any callers in the queue for this item.
And we're sure that the slide is showing.
Yes, we are.
Okay. I just want to be sure. And the sound is being heard. So with that, given that there's no public comment, can I get a motion?
Yes, I would like to motion and granting a charter number.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Member Rodriguez, thank you. Brooks, can you call the roll?
President Darling Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Yes.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimoto Tauri.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously again. Thank you.
All right. And now, thank you, Stephanie, for representing the item. And we are going to move on to the waiver consent items, W1 through W5. And we will now open the phone line for public comment again. And is the slide being shown?
Yes, the slide is now up on the webcast.
Okay. So if there are any public comments on any waiver items 1 through 5, we encourage you to state your name and affiliation for the record, and the waiver item number and the district name to which you are speaking. Please remember to turn down speaker volume of your computers if you're following the live feed. Speakers are limited to 1 minute each. Are there any public comments?
We do have one caller in the queue. I will open up the phone line now.
Thank you.
Good morning. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. You have 1 minute. Your time starts now.
Good morning, State Board of Education members. My name is Cassie Mancini on behalf of the California School Employees Association. Thank you so much for reopening the lines on this item. I just am calling in on item number W04 related to Torrance Unified School District's waiver request. CSEA very much appreciates the efforts of CDE staff to work with us to ensure robust stakeholder engagement on this item, and we're supportive of the waiver with conditions. Thank you so much, and you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes public comment for waiver consent items.
All right. Given that there's no other public comment, I'll now ask for a motion on waivers 1 through 5.
So moved.
Member Rodriguez, and is there a second?
Second.
Member Yoshimoto Tauri, thank you very much. And we will now hold a roll call vote. Brooks, please call the roll.
President Darling Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Aye.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimoto Tauri.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously again. Thank you.
All right. And we're going to move on to item 13, which is the public comment. General public comment is invited on any matter not included on the printed agenda. Members of the public wishing to provide comment on this item may do so by calling the number shown on the public comment slide. Is that posted? It's not where we can see it.
It is being broadcast.
Okay. And we encourage you to please state your name and affiliation for the record. Remember to turn down the volume on your computer. If you're following the live feed, speakers will be limited to 1 minute each. Are there any public comments?
We do not have any callers in the queue for general public comment.
All right. So now we're going to reopen item 1 to take action on the preliminary report of actions, the draft November 2022 meeting minutes, take up appointments to the advisory commissions, and report on our liaison assignments. The first is the State Board draft preliminary report of actions minutes for the November 2022 meeting. While we are waiting for any members of the public to call in, and is the slide posted again on the webcast? Just double checking.
Yes, it just went up.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion from a board member to approve the November 2022 State Board of Education draft preliminary report of action meeting minutes?
Aye.
I have a motion from member Roscoe Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, member Lewis. And are there any public comments?
We do have one caller in the queue. I will open the phone line now.
Okay.
Good morning. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. You have 1 minute. Your time starts now.
Good morning, President Darling Hammond and members of the board. My name is Nicholas Watson, speaking on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. CCSA applauds the State Board for its commitment to revisit the verified data list considered in charter school renewals. We respectfully urge the board to address verified data no later than May 2023 to give charter schools clarity on which assessments they are allowed to submit with renewal petitions. We'd also like to emphasize that we do not believe that charter schools under the default standard are required to submit verified data as part of their renewal process. We ask the State Board to address this issue. We also ask the board to consider extending pandemic considerations in verified data. Currently, the SBA approved verified data only allow pandemic considerations for 2021, but this should extend beyond a single school year. Finally, we recommend the board consider updating growth norms data submitted for 2023-24 renewals to account for the ways in which learning loss has affected student performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second, so we'll call the roll call vote to music. It's kind of lovely.
Apparently the way that we're going to see ourselves out today. Hold on one moment. All right. Darling Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Aye.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimoto Tauri.
Yes.
Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. So it's been an interesting audiovisual meeting. Our next item is appointments to the ACCS, the CPAG, and IQC, and I'll ask Vice President Glover Woods, as chair of the State Board Screening Committee, to present the committee's recommendations for appointments to those three bodies. And we want the public comment slide to go up again, so that after you present your overview and recommendations, we can go to the phone line for public comment. Take it away.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to report that I will not be singing the recommendations to you, but I do want to share that the screening committee did meet in December and January to paper screen and interview candidates for the California Practitioners Advisory Group, also known as CPAG, the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools, ACCS, and the Instructional Quality Commission, the IQC. The screening committee included myself, members Escovedo and Lewis, and we were also joined by CDE and SBE staff members. So first, to let you know our recommendation for CPAG. For the California Practitioners Advisory Group, the screening committee is recommending Samara Polko, who is the Director of Education with the California Catholic Conference, and we are recommending that she serve as the representative for private school children. Her appointment is for a three-year term starting January 3 through December 31st, 2025. We also are recommending that Judy Flores, Superintendent of Shasta County Office of Education, be appointed Vice Chair of the CPAG group. For the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools, the screening committee is recommending Elio Brasil, Superintendent of Keys Union Elementary School District, and we recommend that he be appointed as the commissioner representing district superintendents. His appointment would be for a 2-year term, which would start January 1st, 2023, and go through December 31st, 2024. As it relates to the Instructional Quality Commission, the committee is recommending Ko Vang, who's the curriculum specialist at the Sacramento County Office of Education. We recommend that she be appointed as a commissioner representing teachers, and that her appointment be for a 4-year term starting January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2026. Lastly, we do want to let the board know, as well as the public, that we are currently recruiting for 2 positions on the Advisory Commission on Special Education. Preference will be given to applicants who are representatives of charter schools and parents of students with disabilities. The deadline to apply will be coming up, and it will be February 3rd. And we will bring our recommendations for appointments to the Advisory Commission on Special Education to the full board for vote at the March 2023 meeting. So on behalf of the screening committee, I'd like to say congratulations to all of those who were selected for these various seats on commissions and advisory groups, as well as a very large thank you to all who have applied and took time to interview with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just be sure that we are able to open the phone line for public comment before we turn to our liaisons. Is the public comment slide up for the webcast?
It has just gone up, so we should probably give everyone just a little bit of time here.
Well, we're going to hear from our liaisons while the public is queuing up to call the telephone number and use the access code provided on the slide that is being shown now. And while we're waiting for the members of the public to call in, I want to ask Member Lewis and then Member Escobedo, who served on the screening committee, if they have any initial comments. Member Lewis?
Thank you, President Darlene Hammond. I would just like to add that we had a lot of great candidates, and I think the individuals who were chosen were also great candidates, and that we expect great things from them, and just appreciative for all who applied for the various positions.
Terrific, thank you. Member Escobedo?
I just appreciate SBE staff as well as CDE staff. In some cases, there were hard decisions, but we really push our thinking, and we do believe we got the very best in these committee groups, and really look forward to, their unique perspective in giving us advice and making decisions on what's best for students. So really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the whole organizational structure to make this occur. So, and of course, Dr. Glover Woods is amazing in how she organizes and ensures that we're walking a very straight path.
That's terrific. And I want to just appreciate all of the committee members as well as the staff. It's an enormous job. It takes a lot of care. And it's also a process of trying to figure out how to get the diversity of views and individuals who allow the group to be greater than the sum of the parts in making decisions. So I know there's a lot of thought that goes into all of that. We really appreciate all the time and effort and good thinking that you put into it. We want to see now if there are any clarifying questions, and then we'll go to public comment if there is any. Any clarifying questions? All right, that was very clear. And is there any public comment?
No, we do not have any callers in the queue for public comment.
All right, so is there any further discussion among the board? And so I think we're now ready for a motion. Can I get a motion?
Yes, I move that the board accept the recommended appointments from the screening committee.
Thank you, Member Glover Woods. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you very much, Member Orozco-Gonzalez. And at that point, I think we just want to get a roll call vote.
President Darling Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Yes.
Member Olkin.
Yes.
Member Orozco-Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Patillo-Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshio-Marutari.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you so much, Vice President Glover Woods. And we're now going to move to our liaison reports on activities that are not related to any items on our January agenda. And we're going to call on board members in alphabetical order based on last name. So Member Escobedo, you're going to start us off.
Surely. Would like to talk about my role with NASB, which is the National Association of School Boards of Education. They empower state board members to leverage their role in the educational federal ecosystem to lead for both equity and excellence. And I would like to have our colleagues, if they can, attend an annual conference that they have, and it's typically at several, a different state each year. And this year is going to be in California, specifically in my backyard, San Diego. So it's going to be on October 25th through the 28th. I'll send you more details later, but they typically have experts to help state board members design systems, right, that can really expand on the equity and excellence efforts at each state. So I'm also part of the planning committee for this conference, and we'll be attending. I'll be representing our state at a webinar focused on leadership, on how can state agencies enhance educational leadership throughout their state as well. I will be attending a February meeting for CPAG, and at that meeting, we'll have a final draft of the state plan for approval, and we'll overview the preliminary results for our round 8B. And I think Trustee McQuillan will talk a little bit more about the meeting that we had in November as well. And that is my report, and looking again forward to my work as liaison for this year.
And if people have ideas for the program, it sounds like this is the time to get those to Member Escobedo. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes, I'd like to say that Member Lewis will be sharing a bit more about the Instructional Quality Commission, and Member Olkin will be talking about the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools. So I'd like to take my time just to provide the board with an update regarding the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, also known as CCEE. So there are three areas that I'd like to share with you very briefly. The first is in regards to the work CCEE has been doing with the Community Engagement Initiative, and wanted to let the board know that really this past about a week or so ago, January 11th through the 13th, the Community Engagement Initiative had it had an in-person cohort, professional learning network, and it included cohorts 1, 2, and 3, and there were over 44 LEAs that were there, so schools and school districts, county office and of education that spanned the state from Shasta all the way to Imperial County. So they were all present at that professional learning network that took place on January 11th through 13th. And if you would like more information, you can definitely go to the Community Engagement Initiative website. And also encourage you to find out more about the work that's being done in that area by visiting the californiaengage.org website as well. CCEE also has a Learning Acceleration Systems grant, and I'd just like to share with the board that very soon the Collaborative for Learning Acceleration is going to be launching some free online modules related to areas of math and literacy and language development. Also, the first annual summit is going to be held March 11th, 2023. And so for more information, you can, of course, definitely go to the CCEE website, or I'm more than happy to share any information that I may have as well. There's also going to be a workshop hosted by Project Clear, and it'll be a series of free after-school virtual workshops where participants will be able to explore literacy teaching and learning strategies. Lastly, just to let everyone know that the Data Research Learning Networks, which is an opportunity for districts and counties to transform their data policies and practices and programs, has begun. There's already an initial cohort. If interested in the next cohort, for the 2023-2024 year, please stay posted and keep your eyes open. More information will be coming out in the spring. Thank you very much. I think you might be on mute, Linda.
Member Lewis, it is your turn. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, President Darling Hammond. First report I'll give is for the Instructional Quality Commission. And as Vice President Glover Wood said, we both serve as liaisons to this commission. And so 5 commissioners have reached the end of their terms last month, and the student commissioner for the IQC will term out at the end of this school year. And at the November meeting, if you recall, the State Board of Education appointed 4 new commissioners and 1 student commissioner. And as we just heard today, we appointed 1 more commissioner to the IQC. The next meeting for the Quality Commission will be next week. We'll have an orientation for new members at this meeting. Additional topics at next week's meeting include the election of the chair, the vice chair, and the executive committee members, the appointment of subject matter committee chairs, assignment of members to the subject matter committees, the designation of liaisons. We'll also be reviewing the 2023 IQC goals and a review of the bylaws. And if you want information, the agenda has been posted to the IQC Commission 2023 public meeting notices, agendas, minutes, webcasts page on the California Department of Education website. My next report is for the California Subject Matter Concurrence Committee. And just briefly, if you're not aware of this committee, their mission states that with an unwavering commitment to equity, the California Subject Matter Project seeks to improve student learning through discipline-specific, research-based, sustained professional learning and leadership programs for TK through 16 educators. And you may already know each of the 9 projects in the CSMP network centers on specific subject matter. And to better serve communities across California, each project has regional sites at different colleges and universities, and they host professional learning programs for educators. The 9 discipline-specific networks and more than 80 regional sites serve approximately 25,000 educators from more than 1,200 school districts on an annual basis. And the last meeting that we had was on January the 9th, and I'll just share a summary of that meeting. And Claudia Martinez from the University of California Office of the President is the executive director of the CSMP. And she gave a presentation regarding the fiscal outlook that's connected to the CSMP and the work that they do. And she reported a steady base funding to continue and state funding to the UC Office of the President. And there is federal ESSA funding subcontracted with the California Department of Education. Consecutive one-time state appropriations between the year 2019 and 2023 targeted various areas of professional learning, and an estimated $25 million in additional funding since 2019 targeted multiple statewide initiatives. And so I'll just give you a summary of the initiatives that are being supported by this funding through the CSMP. The first is expanded services during the pandemic, including a response to COVID-related learning acceleration. Second, supporting school districts and county office leaders through the 21st Century School Leadership Academy partnership. Third, supporting novice and guest teachers through the California for Educational Excellence, CCEE partnership, and the development of new cross-disciplinary programs focused on racial justice, climate change, education, and environmental justice, and also additional support for recent state-funded priorities, namely ethnic studies and computer science. And I tell you, it was the second meeting that I'd attended with this group, and the meetings are very insightful with all the work that they're doing to support leaders and educators across California. And it's just wonderful to hear about the details of the various initiatives that they have going and to hear the enthusiasm in the voices of the various committee members as they made their reports. There's a lot of support being provided from this group to our teachers and administrators, and the hope is that all of the professional learning will trickle down to the classrooms across the state to facilitate positive outcomes for our students. And if anyone is liking specific information about what some of these initiatives are, I can certainly give that. I was trying to be succinct in my report, but I do have the information handy if anyone would like additional information about any of those initiatives.
Thank you so much. Member McQuillan.
Thank you. So my report, the first part of it is the California Workforce Pathways Joint Advisory Committee report from there, from the November meeting. This committee, in addition to guiding the development of the CTE state plan, is responsible for annually approving the CTE data report and timeline for meeting the Career Technical Education Incentive Grant, CTIG, and the kindergarten through grade 12 Strong Workforce Program Data Matrix. At our November 2022 meeting, the CDE staff presented the following. We heard a data metrics report, and we're pleased to report the CTE students continue to outperform all other students in terms of their graduation rate and the CAS results. We also heard funding results from the CTIG Round 8 requests for proposals. And then we heard information on the recommended edits to the CTE state plan made by members of the September committee meeting. From the 45-day public comment period on the statewide plan, we heard the following themes: aligning across a statewide range of sectors and interest holders, tackling CTE teacher shortages and credentialing, addressing challenges to implementing the high-quality WBL, work-based learning, boosting access to high-quality CTE, support in building out dual enrollment, supports and services for all student populations, recognizing student leadership development, ensuring preparation options for college and careers, supporting sustainable funding strategies, and improving data collection and use. Those were the themes that were collected in the 45-day listening and public comment period for the statewide plan. Our next meeting is set for February 3rd. We will hear Jobs for the Future. We'll do a presentation on the final draft of the statewide plan for CTE. CDE staff will present the preliminary results from the CTIG Round 8B. And then the Chancellor's Office for the Community College staff will present results from the 2022-23 Strong Workforce Grant Program. So that's what we have for the career technical education. A second point of interest is I've recently been appointed to serve as a State Board of Education liaison to the Model Curriculum Coordinating Council. And this council has the charge of the creation of the statewide model curriculum. Coordinating Council, as specified in AB 167. The council's purpose is to oversee the development of the 4 new model curricula, including the Vietnamese American refugee experience, the Cambodian genocide, the Hmong history and cultural studies, as well as the Native American studies. AB 167 requires the model curricula related to the Vietnamese American refugees experience, Cambodian genocide, the Hmong history, and cultural studies be developed by September 1st, 2024. The Native American Studies curricula needs to be developed by September 1st, 2025. We're working with West Ed. We'll be facilitating the council meetings, which will convene 4 times per year. And the first one will be January 31st, here in a week or so. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Apologies, President Darling-Hammond, I believe you're still on mute.
I was just saying it's great to hear about the model curriculum committee that is launching, and so glad that you're going to be part of that. Member Olken, you're up next.
Great, thank you. And I was just, unfortunately, when Member McQuillan was reporting, my internet froze twice. So hopefully if I freeze, I'll be smiling. In any case, I'm really, I appreciate this opportunity to share out on a few things. First, as Vice President Glover Woods said, I'm going to report briefly on the Advisory Commission on charter schools. We had an item that was on the consent calendar, so I won't go into that. But we did have the opportunity to thank 4 outgoing commissioners who had served the commission extraordinarily well in the last meeting. And it was just such an honor to hear all of the good work that they've done. So I just want to give them a thank you here today. So the 4 outgoing commissioners were Andrea Faisal, Gail Garbolino Mojica, Jared Austin, and Wes Sieber. And they were incredible participants and members of that commission. The other, I actually have switched liaison assignments other than that since we last met. So I'm going to talk briefly about my new assignment and then a project that I get to be part of. So my new liaison assignment is I am the liaison for environmental literacy, which I'm very excited about. And I note that President Darling Hammond has mentioned the importance of this work twice already in our meetings since we started the year, both at our first meeting in September and our meeting in January. I mean, this one. First, we were in the midst of an incredible heat storm and fires across the state in September. And then now we're all drying out after weeks of flooding across the state. And both because of these environmental disasters and also because our young people are so well equipped to lead us out of these problems with the environment. I'm really excited to be able to be a liaison in this role. As President Darling Hammond noted, the state has made some significant investments in environmental literacy over the last several budget cycles. And they range from investments in curriculum and professional development for teachers and in efforts to implement frameworks that were established a few years back to greening our school fleets. And one of the things I think that's particularly both exciting and challenging about this role is the way in which we really all have to work together across agencies and departments to make a significant impact on the environment. But I think we recognize that young people growing up with an understanding of the impact that they make either intentionally or unintentionally on the environment, and the ways in which through science education and research and strong leadership, they can help be part of the solution because environmental literacy is in fact a climate change solution. I think this is a really exciting assignment. And I just wanted to note that when yesterday, Nate Watts, who was one of the students for the U.S. Senate program, spoke about his desire to work in environmental sustainability and to be a leader in those efforts, I knew I was in the right place with this new liaison assignment. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I think also equally impactful and exciting for me is I have the opportunity to serve on a panel of experts from across the state related to improving, strengthening, and refining the IEP template that we use in California. There has been some incredible work already done. In the last year, there was a work group of key stakeholders and practitioners that got us really far along in this work. And I'm excited to be part of the group that is looking at ways we can continue to ensure the IET template drives student-centered, family-centered, jargon-free, assets-based, team-oriented, hopes-driven IEPs for our young people. It feels like we're on the right track, and it's exciting because we know all the incredible contributions that our students with disabilities have to offer. And I think the process, the IEP process can both affirm all of those contributions and help realize them. So I'm really excited about that work as well. And I think that's it. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you. Member Roscoe Gonzalez.
We didn't have the opportunity to meet this past month on assessments, which is my liaison assignment. Holidays got in the way, but through my exploration and the in-depth presentation on item 3, I think of all the teachers throughout the state just reviewing resources to help their students demonstrate the standards they've mastered throughout the academic year and getting ready for that. I know there's anxiety and preparation, and I think that sometimes the best way to prepare is to research and go back into the tools for teachers at the CDE and take all the resources they can to prepare. I'm really interested in, like we mentioned in item 3, how the teachers can review the 2 sets of educator resources that are prepared by Smarter Balance to help them with their higher order thinking skills. I think that the integrated deeper learning resources, those instructional resources, will help support students and educators in that full range of higher order thinking skills that can be measured. There's a lot of professional learning resources on the CDE website and the SBAC website to help them build just that community with their PLC, their professional learning communities at school and at the district level, and just continue to provide resources for teachers to help get their students to meet that proficient or advanced level. That's it.
All right. Member Patillo Brunson.
So there's a couple of items related to the early learning liaison work. We had the December California Early Childhood Policy Council meeting, where we heard from the Department of Ed folks who have actually provided presentations yesterday and today. There was also, I think, really important information about some misconceptions that are sometimes out there circulating that we're trying to figure out how to address and ensure that the misconceptions don't really take on a life of their own. There's a section of that agenda around voices from the field, and there was representation from providers of state preschool classrooms, teachers who were describing how there was some confusion among school districts about whether transitional kindergarten implementation implied that school districts should ramp down their state preschool programs. And as I think was demonstrated by yesterday's presentation by Sarah Neville Morgan from the CDE, the idea of a universal preschool pre-K program is to have both TK for 4-year-olds as well as ongoing state preschool programs for 3-year-olds on a targeted basis, and that school districts can play an important role in that. So that, I think, goes in the list of important information that we need to ensure is out there so that the full benefit of some of these recent early learning investments can be had for both 3s and 4s. There was also a presentation by the Department of Social Services on the transition of childcare programs. This is primarily more in the 0 to 2 and aftercare spaces, and the impact from recent budget investments on stipends for reopening providers across a set of age groups, both for aftercare for kids who are school age as well as 0 to 5. Also in December, the official kickoff and establishment of the Universal Preschool Mixed Delivery Work Group began, and we'll actually be having our very first meeting actually next week. The focus of this work group is to provide recommendations on increasing access and updating preschool standards, as was provided in legislation. Importantly, I think members include many folks from the mixed delivery service from community-based settings, but also representatives from the county offices of ed and from TK program leads, as well as school districts, which again provide both transitional kindergarten programs, but also provide more than half of California's state preschool programs already. The last update is also related to NASB, which I think was covered earlier. NASB has a early learning work group, which convened in December. California is a new member of the Early Childhood Education State Network. It's their fourth cohort of learning states, and we are now alongside North Carolina and DC, covering both how different states are looking to basically bolster their early learning offerings for children and families, but also to do the work of coordination with other state agencies in terms of workforce development, teacher pipeline, accreditation, curriculum, and accountability. And that brings my report to its conclusion. Thank you.
Terrific. Exciting to hear about all of the early learning work that's going on. Member Porter.
Thank you so much, President Darling-Hammond. So I'm going to keep my report pretty brief and just highlight two main areas that I've been working in. And so the first is that I served as a presenter at the Association of California School Administrators Region 14 conference alongside former board president Eileen Strauss. And this was a great opportunity to discuss statewide priorities. And I personally spoke about student concerns and how to effectively include student voice. And from there ended with an opportunity to work with these district superintendents and administrators to create their own student advisory councils and work with me to do so as a way to accurately get student input on local decisions. Second, I've been meeting with various student advisory groups, and I think one of the most impactful conversations was with San Diego Unified School District students. I met with them initially to share opportunities to expand their advocacy on district and statewide level, and then the conversation kind of pivoted to talking about financial literacy, mental health, and school safety as statewide concerns. And so specifically, students were interested in more resources available to them learning about taxes and post-secondary education options and smart investment decisions. And so we had a very important conversation that I think we continue to have as a board as well. And conversations like these are truly at the center of my work. And I'm really looking forward to meeting with more student advisory groups in the upcoming months. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Terrific. I love the fact that we're getting student voice engaged all over the state. Thank you for doing that. Next is Member Rodriguez.
Good morning, President, members, and public. So I have a few updates. The CTC, for Member Olkin's benefit, Commission on Teacher Credentialing, met in December, and I have a few important and exciting updates. First, we celebrated the leadership of Chair Tina Sloan and welcomed the new leadership of Commissioner Marquita Greneau-Shire, who served for years as an ex officio CTC member representing the CSU in her capacity as Assistant Vice Chancellor of Educator Prep and Public Schools Program. The Commission benefited immeasurably from the leadership of Chair Sloan, and we are all excited to support Chair Greneau-Shire to take on the reins. The CTC is completing a multi-year strategic planning process just in time for the new chair to lead its implementation. The plan includes changes in recent years to the CTC's responsibilities, such as the administration of various grant programs related to the educator workforce, expansion of early childhood education prep and licensure activities, and the strengthening of data gathering and reporting efforts. December's meeting also heard an update to the Classified School Employee Teacher Credentialing Program. The 2021-22 state budget appropriated $125 million to be distributed over 5 years for LEAs to support classified staff to become teachers. Round one allocated $14 million to 40 LEAs to support nearly 3,000 staff to become educators. And the round two RFA deadline closed in December. Previous funding in 2016 and 2017 supported 2,260 staff to become educators. If LEAs in your area haven't applied, tell them to keep their eyes out for future rounds of funding. Next, a topic near and dear to my heart, the CTC heard an update from CDE's National Board Incentive Program, which, as you may recall, offers teachers a $2,500 subsidy to obtain their certification and offers National Board certified teachers $5,000 a year for 5 years if they teach in a school serving 55% or more unduplicated students. In 21-22, the first year of the program, the subsidy was awarded to, everybody sitting down, 1,712 teachers working in high priority schools, which is 4 times the number that pursued certification prior to the subsidy and 4 times the number of BIPOC teachers. The certification incentive was awarded to 1,945 teachers also working in high priority schools, and the vast majority of the teachers are in Los Angeles County. So kudos to LA County, and a shout out to the rest of the state to step up the subscription to this incredible program. A couple of proposed draft literacy standards and TPEs for early childhood education and deaf and hard of hearing credentials are open for public comment. So since we've been talking about early childhood education, if you'd like to comment on the standards, the public comment period is open, and you can visit the CTC website, which is ctc.ca.gov, and you'll find further information on the page that you land on. And also the Commission established a new webpage dedicated to information and resources regarding the PK3 ECE Specialist Instruction Credential. So if you go to the CTC webpage, you'll find the information, and you can go there because otherwise it's a very long URL. On this webpage, links are available to the PK3 ECE Specialist Instruction Credential Handbook, authorizations, requirements, standards, and teaching. Next, moving on to going back in the past here, November 15th, I had the privilege of attending the Civic Learning Summit in Sacramento, which was sponsored by Californians for Civic Learning in partnership with the Power of Democracy Civic Learning Initiative, Sacramento and Los Angeles County Office of Ed. There were about 150 of us in attendance at the California Museum. Secretary of State Shirley Weber delivered a very dynamic opening address where she compared our democracy to gardening, right? And when we tend to flowers and they grow beautifully, but if we start ignoring the weeds, they can pop up, and within a matter of days, months, you walk out and your garden's full of weeds. So we have to tend our democracy was her very powerful message. There were presentations from students, which were also, which was the reason that we were there. Clovis Tarpey Elementary, the students presented on their service learning projects. Edison High School, Black Student Union from Fresno, presented on how they organized and called out racist images on social media. A dozen of the students spoke to the Fresno Unified School Board, and many of them were speaking publicly for the first time, but they were prompted by a social media photo that surfaced of a high school student wearing what resembled a KKK hood. And so the Black students at Fresno Unified say that racial harassment intensified, and especially after racially motivated crimes as the ones in Buffalo and Orange County. And students from Anaheim School District delivered powerful TED Talks where one student talked about having empathy and understanding and reaching out to refugees. And another young man talked about food deserts and how sometimes poor communities have more access to fast food versus healthy food. Incredibly powerful TED Talks, and it was just, we were all compelled to action. Lastly, Christine Benson, the chair of NASB's board of directors, invited me to co-chair the PEP committee, PEP public education position. So the NAS, she contacted President Darling Hammond and then submitted my name to the board of directors, and they approved my appointment in December. And so I'll be meeting with the chair, Lisa Fricke, and we'll be planning out what'll be happening for the next meeting, which we'll present in San Diego. Member Escobedo, you talked about the upcoming NASB meeting. So thank you, President and members. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Member Yoshimoto Tauri.
Thank you, Board President. So I'm happy to report that I have 4 new liaison duties. And I'll just briefly touch base on each of those today. The first one is civic learning, and Board Member Rodriguez did such a great job explaining the event in November that I'm not going to reiterate, other than to say we were just really excited to see the students. Their teachers are there, their principals, their superintendents, and their families. And we were joined by the Chief Justice of California, Patricia Guerrero, and she got to meet with each of the students as well. So that was very exciting. The second liaison duty is the Advisory Commission on Special Education. And as you know, the members of this commission provide an important service by making recommendations to us, to the governor, to the legislature of research and program development and evaluation. And what's exciting is with the passage of Senate Bill 291, the commission will now have 2 student members with exceptional needs, speaking of student voice, ages 16 to 22. For 1-year terms. So that's something to be very proud of. And the next in-person meeting is February 15th and 16th in Sacramento. And my third liaison duty is English learners, along with Board Member Escobedo. And as some of you know, I grew up with my great-grandparents who were English learners. And so I have a special place in my heart for the assets, the wisdom, and the courage that comes with the English learner experience. And the next English Learner Specialist convening will be Wednesday, also February 15th in Sacramento. And so I'll be excited to be there. And then finally, my fourth liaison duty is the community schools that I share with Board President, Darling Hammond. And so any day now, please be on the lookout for the 2022-23 California Community School Partnership Program, or CSPP for short. It's a Cohort 2 implementation grant request for applications, and the anticipated due date will be in March of this year. So again, any day now that should post. And I just want to highlight that this year's RFA will require proof of planning, which is something we learned and found to be very important to ultimate success of community schools. So we encourage all qualifying entities to apply for this great opportunity. Thank you. I'll turn it back.
Terrific. And I'm going to just add a little bit more on community schools to note that a lot of activity is upcoming again, as you know, in terms of implementation and planning grants, a formative evaluation RFA, which will be going out soon. So we will have ongoing data from the schools, and the state state transformational assistance center is now up and running. They are doing all kinds of helpful work to the field around community schools. Every Tuesday, they have a learning collective, and people can call in. There's a time from 2 to 3:30 where you can call in and be part of any sharing of information, asking of questions, getting guidance. They have developed a set of webinars as well on culturally relevant family and community engagement, the role of community school leaders, building flourishing partnerships. They're happening on a monthly basis. All of them are recorded and available in archive for those who have missed any of them. And I know that there's a lot of enthusiasm and activity around both the work that schools are doing and the work that they would like to do. And finally, February 3rd is the 50th anniversary of PACE, Policy Analysis for California Education. Some of you know about their work. They are a consortium of universities across the state that have done research on many things, including the Getting Down to Facts reports and a second round of Getting Down to Facts 2 that led to a lot of the policy that we're now implementing around local control funding formula, around early childhood education, around improvements in the work of the teacher credentialing and support system. And so they're having their 50th anniversary in Sacramento. They're doing a conference, and both Mike Kirst and I will be there to, I will be there virtually. He will be there, I think, in person to reflect on the way in which that work has informed the work of the last two administrations and the state board. So that'll be interesting for those of you who want to explore our historical roots. And that concludes my report. And with that, I think I can hereby adjourn the January 2023 State Board of Education meeting at 11:47 a.m. And I will look forward to seeing you in March.